This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to another bonus episode of the DCAU Review. I am Cal, and with me, my good brother, Liam. Liam, it is our 7th annual, at least at the original time of recording. I went back and added them up. 7th annual Black Friday special bonus episode that we are dropping this week. As is the case, we take the week off from a normal review and give ourselves a little break there. But you know what? We're so giving. We love our listeners so much. This is the season of generosity. This is actually one of the episodes I feel like, at least personally, I look forward to each and every year. Although it's getting harder and harder to figure out what we're going to talk about every year. But you know what? We're committed to content, and we're putting it out there. So welcome to this year's Black Friday special bonus episode.
Absolutely, it's a blast, as you said. It's always great fun putting this together, even as it gets a little bit harder to do so. But yeah, we have great fun. So whether you are nursing that turkey hangover, if you're here in the States with us, or perhaps it's just a normal Friday to you if you're somewhere else in the world, either way, let's get a little nostalgia going. And as we head into the Christmas holiday shopping season, let's look back on some toys and other DCAU merch, as we do every year, that at least at one point in our childhood we were certainly hoping would be under the tree come Christmas Day.
Boy, howdy, did we. And this year, Liam, we have a fun one to talk about. As we mentioned, if you want to check out in the archives, as we said, we have 6 other editions of this. If this doesn't quite tickle your fancy, we've done wish lists for companies that are currently making DCAU and Batman the Animated Series action figures. We've talked about the best DCAU video games. We've done a lot of really fun things. This year, however, though, we are kind of drilling down and talking about one of the most vast and thorough toy lines to ever explore the DC animated universe. We are talking about the Mattel Justice League and Justice League Unlimited series, Liam, which going into this week's episode, I thought I knew everything I had to know about this series, and a little research this week enlightened me a little bit here. So we'll get into a little bit, just a brief history here of the Mattel Justice League Unlimited line here in just a second. Before we do that, though, we will, of course, talk about supporting the podcast. If you want to return the giving and feel generous this season, the best way to support our little podcast is to head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. The best way to support us, you can become a one-time supporter of the podcast. Hey, you got ideas on what you want to hear next year when it comes to a Black Friday special? Send us some thoughts, send us support our way, and you know what? Maybe we'll read some of those ideas on a future episode. Also, maybe you're feeling a little bit more generous. It's the season of giving. You want to make our holiday season bright and cheery. You can become a monthly supporter of the podcast at one of our 3 different levels. Every single level that we offer has perks that come with it. Our top tier, though, is our Super Friend tier, which comes with the perks of being able to ask a question and hear your answer on our weekly edition of the podcast. Whether you want to support us one time or you want to become a monthly supporter of the podcast, either way, the best way to do it is to head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Head over today and support the podcast, please. All right, Liam, we are going to talk about this Justice League and Justice League Unlimited series of figures. We're actually not doing a complete history of it. That would be interesting. But we are actually only going to talk about our top 8. Between the two of us, each of us, we've compiled a list of our top 8 favorite figures from this particular line, the Justice League, and then ultimately the Justice League Unlimited line, that I was unaware. I thought this was like maybe started in 2002 or 2001, right when Justice League came out, and like extended to like 2007 or something like that. I would have been wrong if I had been put up in some sort of trivia contest here, because the truth of the matter is this series one of these figures dropped in 2003, which is weird because it's 2 years after the show debuted on television. Kids were waiting to have their action figures shown, but here we are, 2 years later. The first series of figures hit the stores in 2003, and the last series of the Justice League Unlimited figures ended as internet exclusives off of MattyCollector.com, which I'm pretty sure is defunct now, or if it isn't, it's kind of evolved into something else. It's actually come back around, actually. I think they have, I don't know if it's still called Matty Collector, but it's definitely, Mattel has their own collector's website where they offer exclusive things. Free plug for Mattel. They needed it, that poor struggling company. But the final series of these figures came out in 2012, Liam. 2012. That was like 5 years after the show was no longer making new episodes, and I don't even know if it was in reruns at that point on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, I think it had like one last stint in like I think the CW when their last couple years doing like Saturday morning programming. It was called like Vortex, and I think they showed JLU reruns for maybe 6 months or so, but even that would have been a pretty brief window, if anything. So yeah, this is a that's an insane line, and just shows one how much passion for the people making the toys. There's a great guy named I think Spectre Creative who worked at Mattel on YouTube. People can check out, who's done a lot of sort of retrospectives on working with DC and Mattel at the time. So definitely some passion from the people making the toys, and obviously the demand was still there. And maybe that's part of, especially once you get into the Unlimited line, when you have a Justice League roster with 50 plus characters, plus you're going to the future and the past, and you're meeting all these alternate characters and different looks and 3 packs and single packs. There was so much ground to cover, and as we'll get to maybe at the end in our little just for a little bit of fun, there's even a few that we still are missing somehow, despite the fact that this line lasted that long.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be fun as of right now, as of the original time of recording here in 2025. I believe Mattel is actually set to retake the master license of toys back from McFarlane, who's been making them for the last 5 or 6 years, I believe, at this point. So it would be interesting if, in an age where we see toy lines revived and things remade all the time, it would be really interesting to see if Mattel kicks the tires on maybe, reviving a line like this to kind of fill in some of those holes, because as you mentioned, there was such passion, and collectors loved this line so much. So yeah, we're not going to go into the full series here. That would be a fun one to do. Maybe if we ever launch a, I don't know, DCAU toy review podcast, that would be a fun thing to do for that. But alas, here we are today. We're going to stick with our top 8 each of our favorite DCAU Mattel DC Universe slash Justice League slash Justice League Unlimited figures. Lots of different names for this line along the ways here, but ultimately we will start here. And Liam, I will allow you as the younger brother to start first. Give me one of your top 8 here on your list.
Absolutely. So I don't know about you, Cal. I didn't really number mine.
No, I did not.
So, but what we both did was we picked 4 superhero characters and 4 super villain characters. So I think maybe we can just alternate. We'll start with a hero and then go to our villains next, and just volley for serve back and forth till the end here.
That works.
But yeah, kicking off my superhero list. This is probably the darkest horse, but let me tell you, this guy, he got a real push in Liam's Justice League Unlimited Fig Fed. Wave Rider is my first superhero pick. Like the figure itself, it's the same body. Like 800 JLU figures had that body. It's like the Green Lantern buck, but it is The head and specifically how they did, like, he has like Wave Rider has this like flaming fiery hair, and they gave him like this translucent rubber hair on the figure. And let me tell you, man, I was youngly, I'm quite taken with this figure. A lot of playability with this line as well. These were as great as they are for collectors. Obviously, they were still made as a kids product at the time. And let me tell you, Wave Rider got a lot more screen time when I was playing with my figures than he ever did in the actual show. I can tell you that much.
It is a unique figure, and I think that's this one is definitely a surprise for me to hear on your list. Would not have put this one in my guesses for you to have list there. It makes sense though when you explain the reason why. But yeah, I mean the fascinating thing, and I think the reason why this series had the longevity that it did is because, as you mentioned, they reused parts essentially. You have the same generic kind of three
Mhm.
or four different body types that you use, and then you kind of slap some paint on it to make it look a little different. You maybe take a little detail off here or there. You swap an accessory in here or there, a rubber piece to put over it. In this case, like you said, this is like the Green Lantern, same body as the Green Lantern figure had, built kind of the same way, and but he has this really unique head with a translucent fiery head that gives it that really gives it a nice pop on the shelf. I will say that. I think by the time these came out, it was a little bit past the time that I was really playing with figures. So as far as my collection of these, it was definitely sitting on a shelf, collecting dust someplace that I would look at it occasionally. But it is one of those where you look. I have a nice display now set up of them, and when I look in the cabinet, that's one that kind of sticks out because of the neon yellow coloring and the translucent hair. So not a bad one there. Can't fault you for that one. Surprising, but definitely not going to argue with you and tell you that you're wrong.
The other thing is that the 0 Hour comic book event
Mm.
was one of my favorites growing up. I even bought the omnibus as an adult. So, and Wave Rider features very prominently in that. So maybe there's a little residual main comics fan. That's the only comic I've ever read to this date, I think, that had Wave Rider in it, but it made quite an impression, and as did the figure.
There you go. I resisted temptation. I really thought about putting Buona Beast on my list here, and I feel like we're gonna have a similar conversation here. Like Buona Beast, at least I feel like had at least a couple lines and memorable moments in this little piggy on Justice League Unlimited. Wave Rider, I could not tell you which episode he actually shows up in if you put a gun to my head and asked me to name which one that was. So kudos to you though for your imagination as a kid. Like, yeah, I really like this guy. And 0 Hour is a fun, memorable moment that kind of gets overlooked with those gigantic crossovers a lot of times. So,
Mhm.
good on you for that one. I will go with my first one here, Liam, on the list, and I don't have as many obscure ones here, so I'm gonna go with the Martian Manhunter as my first one. This one was a huge one for me. I loved the Martian Manhunter character as a kid, and interestingly, I remember when these figures came out, there was talk about. So they started out with just the original seven. Well, the original six, actually. They did not release Hawkgirl for whatever reason initially.
Mhm.
I don't know. Some of that I would be interested in hearing. Maybe some of the people that worked on this, whether that was kind of the archaic idea that girl action figures don't sell, or if there was something wrong with perhaps there was some issue with rights and getting the ability to make a figure of her. Somewhere along the way in the middle of this series, we'll talk about it with one of my other picks later on. DC kind of must have won some sort of lawsuit or gained some sort of rights, and then Mattel kind of had the gloves off and could make almost anybody. So during this time, though, Martian Manhunter, I remember when I was in my younger days, I loved the idea of this character so much. They hadn't really ever made an action figure of him in the style that we could play with our 5 inch or 6 inch figures. So I took another figure and like tried to turn it into Martian Manhunter with paint and an old Superman cape that I painted and painted this figure green and shaved the character's hair off and all this stuff, and it looked disgusting by the end of the day. But getting this Martian Manhunter figure, albeit he doesn't quite look colored the right way that he shows up on the show. He's a little bit darker on the figure. They corrected that later on. His blue is a little bit off color. But having that figure show up and being able to display that really unique character, he's got the bright red stripes. He looks so cool. And he's like the non-human alien character with all these other guys. As somebody that played with Star Wars figures growing up, it was always cool to have those alien characters because it kind of made they stood out against your kind of humanoid looking characters. So Martian Manhunter, although he obviously has human features, that green skin color, the gigantic red X across, the big cape with the big flourish on the collar, all of that was huge, and a really memorable moment. Getting that figure and adding that to the other five that we had was great. I love that.
Oh yeah, great choice. They got. I feel like they do a good job. Jean has like a real size to him in the show, and I think
Mhm.
they did a good job. He has like really broad shoulders that first Jean you mentioned it. That's a really good point too, because I kind of had one on my list where I was thinking along the same lines of, oh, it was really exciting to get this figure, but yeah, we didn't even have the total justice like 90s Kenner Martian Manhunter that was also probably a reused Superman body, but was at least released as its own figure at one point. We somehow didn't collect that with some of our other DC heroes that we had built out of that era. So getting the first Martian Manhunter of any kind is that's a game changer, and it's an awesome figure.
Yeah, it also speaks to, you mentioned he's got some size to it. I will say using the same 4 or 5 different bodies often didn't quite, it led to some scaling issues. You have characters that should be larger, like a Mazo, that ends up like shorter than Superman and smaller than Darkseid and all that stuff. So there is some scaling issues with the using of these universal bodies here, but Martian Manhunter was a unique sculpt that had his own size to him. And honestly, those first 6 or 7 figures, because they were unique sculpts that didn't share parts and didn't share anything. I believe the DCAU wiki article regarding this credits one of the DC Direct sculptors, a sculptor by the name of Karen Palinko, who did the original sculpting on that original line. She also did apparently a lot of stuff for DC Direct too. So those sculpts were really, really, honestly, like right on model. I feel like for a lot of what we saw, at least those original 7 sculpts did, especially with the way the bodies looked and the way, I mean, they looked like a Bruce Timm, style
Mm-hmm.
artwork in 3D form. So those original sculpts, especially the original 7 there that we would eventually get to, really did feel unique and were at least in scale with each other. Although that wouldn't that wouldn't stay that way for the rest of the series.
Absolutely. And from there, we'll move on to my first villain on my list, our top 8 here. There'll be a theme. I got a lot of big fellas on my list, which again bucked the trend and had mostly original parts. But we'll kick it off with one of those big fellas. Actually, it's actually skewed towards a single primate now that I look at my list. But we'll kick it off with the Ultra Humanite figure.
Hmm.
Again, really only gets play in season 1. Oh, he does come back for the Christmas episode in season 2, Comfort and Joy, but uh, feels like he gets more play in the first season, but certainly has the memorable episodes with Injustice for All. But that figure, I feel like that's one of the first JLU villain or JL villains that we got.
Hmm.
So he stands out there, and also again just being a super unique looking character, the albino gorilla with the giant brain head. Just instantly like you want to match him up against your Supermans and your Martian Manhunters here. Like you needed some muscle on the villain side certainly, and he was one of the first ones to kind of to answer the call. So again, also kind of fun because it's not a character that's going to have a lot of figures across the whole history of DC. I don't know how many other, if any, ultra humanite toys or statues or anything there are. So the fact that he's immortalized in this line is pretty cool, and it's a great, very unique figure.
Oh yeah, again, this is one you can't he he can't really share those parts with another DCAU character, although unless you were going with another primate, I suppose. But he's a different gorilla than maybe one of the other ones that we'll talk about here shortly. But yeah, that Ultra Humanite figure is spot on. Again, it looks right out of the series. He's got the gigantic like bulging brain that has the veins on it and everything. He's got the little
Mhm.
harness with the spikes on it. And you're right. It was interesting because a lot of those first couple of series were all the heroes. We had of course multiple different versions of Batman and different costumes that he didn't appear on in the show. And then you have Flash and Green Lantern. And then they started doing attack armor, which is just the same figures painted a little differently with like little plastic accessories. As you said, this is a children's toy line, right? You're appealing to children first and foremost here. So you have armor and all these different things that come with the with the toys that aren't exactly screen accurate. And then we finally broke the seal. We get a Lex Luthor figure, we get a Darkseid figure, but then you're still getting all of these different versions of the heroes. So anytime that those villains came out, which I think it was series 7. So we're 7 series in, and we've got 3 villains or 2 villains by this point. And Ultra Humanite comes out, and he is just such a unique looking character. Darkseid we've seen action figures of before, but this gorilla, half human, half gorilla, or gorilla with a human brain in his head, or whatever the origins is of this particular Ultra Humanite really pops and looks really cool. And he's albino and he's white with these red eyes, and it's a cool design, obviously, and it translated so well to 3D form.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, all the detailing on that, when you said like the veins on his head to the kind of rubber harness with the spikes and everything is just, yeah, an immaculate villain choice to start off our Justice League villain list. But what about yours?
Yeah, I will kick mine off. There's also a theme of big fellas and maybe ladies on here that we'll talk about here. But yeah, there's just something about the way that these particular figures with unique sculpts I feel like are made that made them stand out. My first villain that I'm going to talk about is Mongol, and this one is interesting because this is another one of those figures that was. I remember specifically, so this is going to get super nerdy here. So by the time that Mongol was being discussed, we're in like the very tail end. We're coming to 2011, 2012 of this toy line existing, and I'm on the message boards watching people talk about this and complain about this at MattyCollector.com. They're all given. I think interestingly enough, the gentleman that you talked about that's on YouTube, I think he was a lot of the recipient for vitriol and hate from a lot of the collecting world because of some of the decisions that he made about characters, and he was visible on he was visible on this discussion board. So he was a target for collectors, unfortunately, that wanted their little plastic versions of their characters, So 2012, we're nearing the end of this line. We're A lot of it was also I remember collectors felt bullied into certain things. They would ask for a certain character, they would be told they couldn't do that character, and then they would put out another character, and they were being told by Mattel, well, if you really want this other character that we can't make, you need to buy a lot of this character in order to show that there's support for this line. So there was a little bit of reason to be dissatisfied with how Mattel was handling things. Regardless, too nerdy at this point. Mongol was being discussed, and I remember on eBay, a couple of Mongol prototypes started popping up. These pre-production samples of Mongol, and I remember thinking, this is going to be the only way that I'm going to be able to get one of these. So I messaged somebody that had sold one and said, "Hey, do you have any of this character?" And I remember being very cautious. Yeah, I'm don't know if I'm doing something illegal. I don't know who this person is that supposedly sold one to somebody else. They're like, yes. And they message back and they send a picture of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, how much? They're like, you got to PayPal me X amount of dollars and I'll send it to you. So I PayPal this complete stranger money for this prototype and cross my fingers. And 3 weeks later, at my door, a Mongol prototype shows up. And here I'm thinking, I'm like, yes, I've got one. I can sleep peacefully now. And you know what? They'll never release this. And then, gosh darn it, 3 months later, they released the actual Mongol figure. And so I wasted $100 or whatever it was on a on a prototype of a figure that did get released. But nonetheless, this Mongol figure, he looks cool. He's got size to him. It's another one of those big villains. He's probably not as big as he should have been. Maybe should have been a little bit bigger, but still, putting him on your shelf, looking at him, he looks great. He's one of the more memorable villains, obviously, between World and for the man who has everything. You gotta have Mongol if you're gonna have some of the top villains in Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. What a memorable turn he had, especially for the man who has everything. I mean, that's in the conversation for probably top five, if not top three episodes in the entire series. So you got to have Mongol, and boy, he looks really cool, very show accurate. Love the way that he looks on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is you're preaching to the choir on one, just the excitement because he does feel like one of the big. If he wasn't in this line, he'd be on that. He'd be probably the first one on our list because between the World two-parter, which is not anybody's favorite episode of Justice League, I shouldn't say that. Every episode is somebody's favorite, as we've learned over the years doing our show. But also for his appearance and for the man who has everything, which for my money, we'll see how our scores go when we finish up Justice League Unlimited. But for my money, I think that's my favorite episode of JLU. Period. So that you gotta have Mongol in that line, and then yeah, it's a great figure. Like it's perfect. It walked right out of the show. And yeah, he would have been like a screaming like, oh my gosh, how did they not make this guy in the line, maybe even in the original, the early days when it was still a store product line guys, much less some of the more random ones that had already been made before that. So thank goodness at the 11th, at quite almost literally the 11th hour, they were able to pull off Mongol at the last minute, because that is a fantastic figure.
Agreed.
All right, and moving on from here, we'll go back to the hero side of my top 8, and my next pick is the Black Canary figure. I feel like we have like 8 of these. I think she got packaged in a lot of like in a couple different sets, or maybe we also had like some thrift stores would find this one. I just think as far as nailing the look from the show, and also because not some of the female characters, they use this really small mold, like the Supergirl and the Stargirl were like diminutive, like they looked like like toddlers almost next to the rest of the figures, because I understand the idea of wanting a more petite female body for some of the younger characters, but a lot of these female characters just don't quite look it. And then I always thought the Hawk Girl it's not superposable, so I didn't really love the Hawk Girl. And so I feel like when I was thinking about which female character I would put on my list, it came down to two. And so I've had a lot of different Wonder Woman representation over the years in toy lines. So I think, again, just maybe for the uniqueness at the time, especially, not a lot of Black Canary merch making it to retail shelves. So that's where she's set. And then also because I think looking back on it now, I appreciate that figure more because she's in some really great episodes of the series. So I feel like she's like a maybe not front shelf, but like second row character for me in JLU. So I think that's my pick there.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's interesting. This is one where they followed a pattern here. I mentioned before with Martian Manhunter, where they first released him, that his skin color, while it was green, it wasn't
Mhm.
quite the green shade of green that it ended up being in the show. The blue wasn't the right shade. The original release of the Black Canary figure had these legs that had like actual visible fishnet lines on them. And they also, for some
Mhm.
reason, made her midriff skin color, like she was wearing, I don't know, like a tube top or a
Mhm.
bikini for some reason. And I remember
Mhm.
thinking how weird a decision that was and how that must have gone through multiple different like designers and approval sessions before they were like, "Oh yeah, we're
Right.
going to make her she's wearing a bikini." Of course, even though the character does not wear she wears a one piece over like
Right.
plain
Usually
gray.
we're adding usually we're adding clothes to the female characters for toy lines, not taking them off.
Precisely. So they eventually did correct this. That was some of the things that they actually, I feel like, started doing later on down the line, where they would correct some of the colors or they would make it appear more show accurate. And that's how they, honestly, I feel like they got people to buy more figures that way, because you would be like, oh, I want the one that actually looks like it's on the show, not the one that, has the bikini under the jacket and the weird like coloring on the legs with the hash marks. Like, so yeah, that smart by Mattel to, if this wasn't intentional, which I would tend to say it's not, to then redo it and then force you to spend more money on yet another Black Canary figure, which was kind of the key to the existence of the series for so long. You release enough 3 packs of action figures with the same Superman or the same Batman or Flash or Green Lantern, and then you plug in maybe one new, if not, and if you were really lucky, 2 new characters in with it. You, by the end of the day, your toy chest has 55 of the same Green Lanterns in there, and you get your new characters at the same time. So yeah, this one's cool because you line it up right next to the Green Arrow, and it's the height at least matches a little bit better with that. The Green Arrow was a tall drink of water in this line. He was a
Yes.
tall guy. For whatever reason, his legs were super long, and he towered over like Batman and Superman. So Black Canary at least
Mhm.
lines up stature wise, as you mentioned. She's not that little diminutive Polly Pocketbook. All right, Liam, I will go with my next hero, and that is going to be, this is a guy who I think I was so excited to get this guy in hand that it didn't dawn on me that he actually looked a lot different than what I remembered him looking like in his first appearance in the DCAU, and that's going to be Etrigan the Demon. Uh, if you
Ooh.
compare Etrigan's look in Justice League, like in my mind, it's like, oh, it's the same character model. He looks very different on screen in Justice League versus what he ended up.
A lot smaller, right?
Yeah, smaller guy. Like he doesn't. He's like his skin's a little bit brighter, a little more colorful than what he was in. He's a little more muted, I feel like, in the new Batman Adventures. But regardless, this is a character, one of the first kind of expanded characters that we saw in the DCAU outside of those guest stars on Superman, and he shows up again in Justice League. So this one is just a cool looking figure. Again, this is a unique sculpt. He's not sharing that same body as the Flash or Superman or anything like that. He's got the little like hunched over. He probably should have been a little bit bigger, but on the show, if you look, I feel like he is a little bit shorter than Batman in that appearance that he shows up with. So I guess they did some correction of his size on the show itself. But this is another one. It just pops on the shelf. It's a really neat combination of different colors, and looks super faithful to the character itself and what you see in the show. Plus, we got a character who's literally named the Demon Etrigan, and he's in a children's toy line. Like, they got around it by calling him Etrigan. I feel like he doesn't say the demon anywhere on the packaging, but this is a cool one because it just, you could get this one and probably just put it on a shelf and be happy. It's that cool looking.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great, and to your point, yeah, it fits the scale because yeah, Tricken's I don't know, they made him like Wolverine size, like comic Wolverine, where he's a little fella. So
Hmm.
So and also because they kind of gave him this crouch, which I think helps too, because I feel like in certainly in his appearances in Night with Shadows, he's always kind of like skulking and almost crawling around. So yeah, that's a great figure, and like the black around the lips and everything, just like you said, that made that JLU design a little bit more unique. Yeah, great figure. Not one that would have been on my radar, but when you sent over your list earlier, I was like, well, yeah, of course. Like this is a great choice.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a fun one, and as you mentioned, it's a memorable episode or two on the show, and then of course his appearance in the new Batman Adventures. It means your play could go beyond Justice League if you wanted to.
Absolutely. And with that, we can move back over to villains. And I think here we can maybe do our. I think this is our only crossover across our two lists here. I kind of hinted at this earlier, but we both have another primate on our list. So let's talk about this Grodd figure, and then we can make an aside of how they really made you earn it. You talked about like getting the extra, how many extra Supermans and Batmans we had to make it look. Some of these figures on our list, you had to buy a 6 pack, and it was almost all reruns except for this one big figure, and that included this Grodd pack.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it comes with Batman, Flash, and Superman. You're guaranteed if you're getting especially during the retail run. They eventually did a 6 or 7 pack or started doing those where you wouldn't necessarily get the rerun of Heroes, but a lot of times, many of these 6 packs, you're guaranteed to at least get Batman, Superman, maybe Wonder Woman 2 or the Flash thrown in there, maybe more. And in this case. This one is a weird one because you had Batman, Flash, and Superman, which again, if you're collecting the series, you've probably already got them. And then you have the Joker, but it's not the Joker. It's the Red Hood Joker, but not the Red Hood
Uh-huh.
from the comics that would later become Jason Todd, if you're thinking of that. This is like the classic red domed with a cape and black suit Red
Mm-hmm.
Hood, like origin Joker story Red Hood. Very odd choice, having never appeared in any DCAU material that I'm aware of, other than I think it's the tie is it the tie-in comics, the Batman and Adventures Volume 2 started using the Red Hood, I
Mm-hmm.
think, at one point, but that would have been a weird deep cut, I feel like, to throw into this into this here, with Lex Luthor in a suit that he did not appear in on the show, and then Gorilla Grodd. So you really earned it.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. Yes, it's a very bizarre set. I did love that just for the uniqueness. That Red Hood Joker is a wacky choice as far as a repaint. But yeah, it's that Grodd figure. I mean, it's massive, and it's again obviously all original parts because he's even bigger and beefier than the Ultra Humanite figure, which you may have expected them to reuse some parts from. But yeah, I think he's all original here, and then again just completely nails the look of the show. So this kind of evokes the later season, although ironically the Legion of Doom season, the Secret Society season, Joker was not able to appear in. So weird that maybe he's the choice, but I guess he's a bigger name villain than the as well as we've talked about, the who appeared on the show did not necessarily affect who would appear in the toy line, thankfully. But yeah, in this case, kind of weird that Joker's in this set because this seems like a season 3 themed set. But it's he's another big name to throw in there. But yeah, that Grodd figure, like I said, just giant, and again, one of the, I mean, other outside of like your Lexes and Dark Sides, as far as a Justice League JLU villain character, I feel like Grodd's pretty high up the list of most appearances and most important appearances, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably top 3 most important villains, top 4 maybe to the entire series based on screen time. The argument could be made probably top 3, top 2, maybe the most important
Mhm.
when all is said and done.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a figure of Grodd seemed like a no-brainer. And again, this guy is a massive, like he's just a really neat, unique body. I'm honestly shocked that they didn't repurpose it for like a Salivar or something else later on in the series. Maybe that would have come to fruition, but it's a completely unique sculpt. He looks exactly show accurate, exactly how you would want him to look. The only thing you're missing is Powers Booth's voice coming out of the figure itself. Like you're kind of half expecting it based on the way that it looks in that 3D form. But yeah, he's got some real girth to him. He looks like how he looks in the show, not too much detail, but just enough there to really drive home that this is the same character that you're seeing every so often on the screen, or for Justice League Unlimited, the entire final series.
Absolutely. And from there, we'll move back over to Heroes. This is going to be this one is a fun one. We're getting to some heavy hitters and maybe some more traditional, obvious ones for me. I have the first edition, the hook-handed shirtless Aquaman
Mm.
from the JLU
Good
line.
one.
Again, I think entirely original parts, just because how could you reuse any of these for anyone that is an Aquaman?
Mm.
But big boy, which again it fits for the show because they show him certainly being just as broad and big as a Superman in the show. And yeah, the giant silver hook hand, the necklace around his neck that's molded on, like just an awesome figure. And another one that I was so excited. He didn't, even though he appeared in the original Justice League show a couple times, we had to wait for the JLU line, as with a lot of these other guest stars, like you mentioned, Etrigan. So excited that we finally got to add a DCAU Aquaman to our collections when this bad boy hit the shelves.
Yeah, it is one of those again. I think we talked about it when we did our Aquaman Spotlight episode, but a lot of those figures and the things that came out initially with the original run of Justice League seems to have included Aquaman a lot, as if he was just kind of assumed to be a part of the team, or maybe he was going to have a bigger role at some point and they decided against it, or we've done some speculation there. Like maybe it's just the idea, the public association of Aquaman with Justice League. So it's interesting that he didn't get a release earlier, I feel like. He isn't in that original, in that original 6 or 7 series. He does come out. I think we're in season 6. No, series. It's like a 4-pack called Journey to Atlantis, where he apparently debuts comes with some of the heroes with scuba gear on and Aquaman. So, the idea that he didn't get dropped in that very initial wave is a little bit surprising, but at the same time, he's right there. He gets released before some of the more important villains and some of the other crossover heroes that would have appeared on some of those other episodes. So yeah, he's important. He's cool. He's shirtless. He's got a gigantic hook, and this is another one we talked about on our Spotlight episode that they did eventually released hook hand with cape, hook hand, just hook hand normal, two hands with cape. He eventually gets a version that's of how he looked in Superman the Animated Series with the short haircut. But then they were also gonna release an orange shirted version with the beard and the long hair too, that got cut at the very last. I think it was scheduled for one of the last series that didn't ever get released. So yeah, you got to have this guy in your collection, especially you want to play with your toys in the bathtub, whatever. This guy's got to be a part of your Justice League adjacent at that point. And yeah, he looks cool. He's got the long flowing hair. He's got the hook hand. That hook hand was pretty durable too. I remember like eventually we had one that I think the hook broke off of it, but it's pretty durable, all things considered, with as much rough and tumble that kids would have playing with those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and we'll move on to my next entry onto the hero side, since we shared Grodd on our villain side. And mine is going to be the main man, Lobo. This is this is another one that you would never think, because of who the character is and his reputation and all of that, that he would have gotten a release necessarily. He kind of, I don't know. It was interesting. I feel like he's a little bit more accepted nowadays, but maybe it had something to do with the fact that he was in like what was essentially a rated R comic at that time and had gained somewhat notoriety from being more adult oriented. But the fact that this guy shows up on Superman the Animated Series, didn't get a Superman figure, and then has memorable parts in Justice League Unlimited, a memorable return in Hereafter. You gotta have a Bruce Timm style, DCAU Lobo figure. And thankfully, towards the end of the run, again, this is something that happens years after the show is off of the air. In 2010, they dropped the Lobo figure. He did not go to mass retail. I think he was a exclusive. It was either on the website or it may have been a Comic Con exclusive. But this figure looks like he's massive compared to the other figures. So he's got some size to him. He's got unique sculpt. He's got the knee pads. He's only missing the chain. Like that's the only thing that he should have is the chain with him. But he's got the one sleeve on his jacket. And again, you're just expecting this figure to come to life and sound like Brad Garrett or something. He just looks so incredibly show accurate. And towards the end, some of the sculpts on the figures, I would say, were hit and miss at best. There were sometimes the figures would look really show accurate, and other times it was like somebody took the original sculpt and like jumped on it or smashed it with their fist and then decided to send it to production. So this one, no doubt, looks like a 3D version of the character. It's maybe my only complaint is he doesn't have the black headband or the armband, the Superman Hereafter armband you could put on and take off. But that's a minor quip. This is a great action figure.
Oh, it's great, and it's to a point. And there's quite a few of these, both for I think for a little bit for Batman the Animated Series and a little bit for Superman the Animated Series for sure. I would say a lot more for Superman. It also, yes, Lobo appears in the one episode, but also it's like righting a wrong that we've certainly talked about. There's so many Superman the Animated Series characters who did not get figures in that Superman Kenner line. It's pretty limited, especially for villains. So, I mean, this line gave us our first Livewire figure, Weather Wizard, even like Parasite guys getting figures that really guys and girls getting figures that really deserved it from that original Superman line and never got it. So it's like, thank goodness the JLU line stuck around long enough to right some wrongs. And yeah, not only it's a memorable Justice League episode, he's one of the most memorable Superman episodes originally. And as you said, just a complete nailed likeness with the one big beefy white arm sticking out of the ripped jacket and the chains and everything on the knee pads, the big boots and everything. It's sculpted really, really well. And the paint apps are great too. So it's just, yeah, not only is it a great figure in and of itself, it's also kind of one of those figures that really rights a wrong for what we were, I use this term in a joking way, but robbed of by Kenner not giving us quite enough Superman rogues during their days with the license.
Yeah, it's also I think it's just one of those figures, and it's something that obviously I know that there are people that collect the entire series of something, and then there are people that are just like, I like this one character, or I just want to get this one figure. And this Lobo figure is done so well that I feel like even if you don't collect the entire series or you don't even collect Lobo figures, you just see this, you're like, I want to buy this and put this on my desk. Like this just looks hella cool. That's how neat it is. So, and what a great looking figure it is. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those that mass appeals to people, or that mass appealed to people, and could be something that everyone can enjoy, from your intense high intensity collector to your more passive, just I'm gonna collect one thing kind of person.
And next on my list on the villain side is another one that I would say, like that Lobo figure, rights a little bit of a wrong from the Kenner Superman the Animated Series days, which is we never got a Lex Luthor in a suit. That's the only thing he ever wore in Superman the Animated Series.
Hmm.
and we didn't get it. We got this weird like robot Lex. Plus, the skin tone was wrong. Nobody would mistake him for an African American man. The Kenner Lex Luthor figure, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, he's in this weird robot suit with this wacky armor, and it's just not a very good figure, unfortunately. But thankfully, they gave us I would actually say the head sculpt maybe is more like the Superman Lex than the Justice League Lex even, but we got a Lex Luthor in the black and white suit that he is in, actually only briefly in Justice League, ironically. And then on top of that, he also comes with like clip-on armor pieces of the green and purple superpowers esque power suit that he's wearing once he's the more traditional. Finally, again, really right or wrong, and also it's a 2-in-1 with both Lex in the suit, which you desperately need, and with the power armor that clips on to make him in the green and purple suit as well.
Yeah, that's one of those classic. Again, this is a kid's toy line, and it's one of those things where it aesthetically it feels like they should have done just a unique sculpt of that Lex in that suit. They are
Mm-hmm.
in the green, the classic superpowers looking suit, but they never did. This was the only execution of this. This is also they only released the suit version once. I don't know if this is a case of the Robin dragster incident where the mold was
Mm-hmm.
destroyed in some sort of factory fire or something. But for whatever reason, this 2-pack with Superman is the only time that they released this Lex Luthor in the suit, thus making it at the time it was a pretty rare member of this series. But yeah, it's he's in when you snap the armor off of him, he's in the suit that he wears the entire time for Superman the animated series, unless you count that time that he was in bed and Batman threatened his life. But every other moment in the series, he's wearing this suit, and that's what you think of when you see Lex. So yeah, righting a wrong is exactly how I would put it, and it's fun. It has some really interesting playability there for if you're a kid with the snap on snap off armor, and it doesn't look all that bad. Like the chest piece and the legs are the leg pieces of the suit or the armor rather are all one piece, so he can't really move very much in there. His arms move up and down, but it's more of a put the armor on him and let him stand in one spot to kind of look cool versus functionality, I would say. But yeah, it is a great execution of being able to do two figures in one here, knocking that execution out and righting a wrong, as you put it. That's a good one for the list here. I love that one. I will move on to my next villain of the list, and that is going to be. Is it Monday? I think it is Monday. Born on a Monday, Solomon Grundy. It's this guy's day here when at the original time of recording, and boy howdy, this is another one of those figures. A completely unique, gigantic, big fella that looks exactly like he does on the screen. And we know that there's some really interesting Grundy moments here where he turns into this weirdly sympathetic character on the show that has his redemptive arc where he sacrifices himself against the not Cthulhu Zulu character, and then ultimately we get our follow up to that, which is definitely just Old Yeller with Hawkgirl doing the unfortunate being tasked with the unfortunate duty of killing a guy who's already dead and is now zombified. So, can you kill a zombie twice? I don't know how that works, but Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday, this figure is another one that you put on your shelf and you just look at. And they did two versions of this. There's one that's like slimed up version of Grundy and like a standard version. This came with a
Mm-hmm.
box that like had a pull string that you pulled on it and it like shook for some reason. But this was I think this was a San Diego Comic Con exclusive or a New York Comic Con exclusive. So this one was another one of those that was hard to find. Might still be hard to find. I don't know. But yeah, this is another one. You put it on your shelf and you just kind of look at it and you're like, wow, they absolutely nailed the sculpt of this figure. Like he looks so cool and so much like he did in the show, in the time and attention spent to the detail and just the way that the character looks in 3D form. Just really impressive with how this figure turned out.
Yeah, that's another one where because he's so prominent in those first two seasons, he pops up a few times. As you mentioned, he has the big sacrifice in the episode with Hawk Girl, and then yeah, coming back for the return, or not the return, the Wake the Dead in JLU, and having that memorable episode as Shaira comes back into the show as well. Great. The figure itself nails it. And then yeah, this is another one I think on that same level that we were talking about, where if they hadn't gotten to this one by the end, like with Mongol on your list, you'd be like, oh my gosh, like how did we not get this guy? Like he's one of the integral and most memorable rogues, voiced by Mark Hamill, one of the non-Joker roles Mark Hamill played during the DCAU time as well, and like you said, has so many memorable moments as both kind of a background, kind of comedic character, and then as like we said, having the more tug on your heartstrings moments in all of the DCAU. So yeah, great figure. And then as you mentioned, yeah, the packaging, everything about the presentation for this figure kind of ruled. So thank goodness again, like with Mongol, that we got it late in the day, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one that would feel your shelf would feel bare if you're a completist with this series, if you didn't have one of the more memorable villains and redemptive villains at that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then this will be my final superhero here on my list. And that is, we're going all the way back to the first series release of the Mattel Justice League lines. It's the Flash from that line. And I hemmed and hawed because that Batman was also a big deal. Like the longer ears, I couldn't use the Kenner Batman. Not only was there a little bit of a scale issue, but it bothered me that all the NBA Batmans have the really, really short ears. And it would bothered me playing with those with like if I was playing Justice League, because I was like, I need long-eared Batman. Like, so that one was like close to being the choice. But as mentioned, we had plenty of Batman toys, plenty of animated Batman toys to use in its place until we did get that Justice League line. And we did have the Total Justice Flash, but that guy's like, he's got like a 12-pack of abs and it's a different lightning bolt, and he's just got this like real gritty face and everything. I like that figure. Got a lot of play out of it as a kid, certainly. But as far as one that he just kind of nailed the likeness and kind of what you were saying earlier with the Martian Manhunter, I just remember being so excited to have this animated version of the Flash finally. Again, a character who originally appears in Superman and then comes back in at the start of Justice League, one of the founding seven. Yeah, this Flash was just like the one I remember being so excited. And also because being a kid, and even now when we go back, the Flash is one of the characters that I think stands out the most as far as what they did, as far as making their stamp on it. And Michael Rosenbaum's performance, obviously a big part of that, but he's one of, outside of your Batmans and Supermans and Wonder Women, I think like this is one of the characters that gets the the biggest and some of the most memorable and funniest moments in the whole show. So this first Flash figure that came out was something of a game changer. And the other thing too, like I needed one with this lightning bolt. I couldn't do the lightning bolt on the Total Justice was too different for me to count it. So like I really needed this Flash.
Not only that, I feel like, but with the Total Justice figures, which we could do our own bonus episode talking about those one day. Those are great. What a great fun set of toys to play with as kids. But
Oh, yeah.
those figures were so jacked and muscly, and like their muscles have
Yes.
muscles, and you can see their delts and their lats, and every muscle group on they look like they're on steroids or something like that. Like all of them are just like super defined muscular. And obviously that's the opposite of what a Bruce Timm style or DCAU style figure is. So when you put this Superman that's kind of all smoothed down, for the lack of better term, without any not a ton of muscle definition or very little muscle definition, next to a Flash that's just jacked to the gills, like you got to really have an imagination, which you you can force it, but once you have the option of like, no, this is Michael Rosenbaum Flash that I know that is talking every single week on my television, and he looks like him, and he's got this like. What I love about that sculpt is like Flash has like a smile, which is obviously very important for this character because of how happy-go-lucky he is and how, joyful that character is in general and the comic relief that he provides in a lot of episodes. So the fact that he's the head itself is smiling really drives home that yeah, this is the same character that you're watching on television, and I don't have to use my imagination as much, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yes, absolutely. And as far as the design goes, again, pretty much nailed the character design down to the wire. It's because of the coloration, they gave him like this really deep, sort of like shiny crimson color. I don't know if they ever quite nailed the Flash from a color standpoint in this line, but they did the best they could. And like I said, just having a more slimmed down and show accurate Flash figure was a real game changer for me.
Absolutely. All right, Liam, let's go to my final hero here of this list here of our top 8 Justice League / Justice League Unlimited Mattel figures here from this line. And my top one may be unsurprising if you've heard us talk about this before. He was actually on our list for top 10, or my list for top 10 DCAU figures ever. He made that list, and that would be The Question. And as I sort of alluded to before, there was sort of a moment in the series of these figures coming out that the game sort of changed. The hierarchy of power is changed in the Justice League Unlimited and Justice League series here with Mattel. Something happened. I think it had something to do with character rights. A lot of those characters were character rights were tied up in litigation and whatever else, I'm sure the families, those greedy families that just wanted residual money for the characters that their loved ones created or were being so mean to the gigantic Warner Brothers Corporation, and that, they just demanded to be compensated for the work that their loved one did that never actually got compensated for, those evil guys. But anyway, something happened along the way, and wouldn't you know it, the master license, as they called it, was finally in the hands of Mattel, and that meant they could kind of expand beyond making just your normal figures and your normal DC standard characters. I think some of the characters that were listed in there, it's the Blue Beetle, the Question. I think maybe definitely Shazam / Captain Marvel. Those characters that were part of other companies that were eventually purchased by DC. There was something with the rights there that prevented them from making them. Well, something happened. A court must have ruled in favor of that small little business organization called DC Comics, and they got to make the figures. And The Question finally came out. I can remember there was actually an ad. I think it's in some of our comics, and definitely in some of the toy magazines at that time. They actually did a full page ad of The Question. It's a picture of the action figure, and it's this just him looking cool. He looks so show accurate, no facial features. He's got the blue duster, he's got the fedora, and I just remember being so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get this figure, and being terrified that I wasn't going to be able to get my hands on it. But yeah, this is another one that unfortunately suffers some of the scaling issues. He's gigantic because they just reused the Mattel Two-Face body for this figure and threw a jacket on top of him. But boy howdy, he's holding a little clue, which is awesome. Like they gave him a piece of paper to hold as part of perhaps coming together and figuring out the different ins and outs of the conspiracy theory, whatever he's working on at that time. But he's holding a little clue, which is great. And he looks so show accurate. It's so cool. I love this figure to this day. Like, he goes in the front of my display. He's what we call a fronter in the toy community. As far as our displays go, he is in the front, in that front row of my Justice League Unlimited display there. He is probably one of my favorite figures of all time just because he represents one of my favorite episodes of all time. And it's really cool that he can sit there next to Huntress. We have the Huntress from that, her look from the Jim Lee
Mhm.
inspired look from that show also came out. So you can put them together. You can ship them there. You can even stand them next to Black Canary and Green Arrow, and they look all great on your shelf there. But yeah, this is one that for many reasons, but most importantly, just for a lot of the nostalgia around when this finally came out, why it ends up being on my top list here.
I mean, yeah, great choice. I mean, we've talked quite a bit over the years, as you mentioned. We talked about this figure a little bit before, but as when we were reviewing that Cadmus arc of Justice League Unlimited over the years on our show, like the Question is such an integral character, maybe the breakout character as far as someone that, I mean, obviously he had been around in the comics for years and years, and people maybe knew him if you were an avid comic reader in certain eras, but he's not a guy who was exactly getting a lot of household names or leading his own series at the very least at that point. So the fact that they kind of picked this version and made him such a focal point of the arc is such a testament to Bruce Timm and Dwayne McDuffie and everybody who made it on the shows, along with Jeffrey Combs as his voice actor. And then, yeah, I mean, you're doing a Justice League Unlimited figure line. It, like, not having the Question, it would be like not having Green Arrow or not having, Supergirl or someone like one of the
Right.
main characters of the most famous arc of your show, the arc that a lot of people, perhaps ourselves included, consider one of the best sort of continuous story arcs in DCAU history. Not having one of the main characters of that would be a complete travesty. So thankfully the lawyers and everyone got on the same page. The T's got crossed, the I's got dotted, and we were finally able to get this Question figure because yeah, he belongs, as you said, front and center in a Justice League Unlimited toy line, and it's a great figure on top of it. So yes, home run that they finally were able to pull this off.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And then we'll move to my last villain here. And this is another one. We already talked about those six packs. This one was at least kind of fun because the Batmans and Supermans got repainted in an interesting way. But we have Doomsday, which again probably goes back more to my enjoyment of that character from the classic Death of Superman. His DCAU appearances are not the most exciting. Although the Doomsday Sanction episode maybe ranched up the drama a little bit because that's again wrapped up in the Cadmus arc. But having the DCAU version of one of the most iconic Superman villains, one of the most iconic comic book characters, I would say, of the last 30 years, just based on what they had him do. The fact that he's the guy who killed Superman, the creature that killed Superman. So when that character was introduced in DCAU, it's kind of a shock. I remember watching, A Better World Part 1 and seeing Doomsday come marching out of an asteroid. Meanwhile, in the middle of this like weird alternate Justice League episode, it's kind of bizarre that it happens that way. But then also, obviously, like you said, he comes back in JLU. But yeah, just a great figure. Really, I think especially the head sculpt on that is great. And yeah, he's again massive. He's got all the spikes and the protrusions all molded into him, and the spikes on his knees, even like, but still very playable as well. So another one of those great six packs. And he came, I believe, packaged with the Justice Lord versions of several of these characters as well. So that was another way to fit some of those characters in.
Yeah. You also ended up getting a variant version later on that they released, the same six pack just with different repaints, and he was painted with the lava glow from his fight with Superman inside the volcano. So, yeah, very very interesting. If you prefer your Doomsday to be multicolored as opposed to just gray and white, there you go. But yeah, he's another massive figure, huge build to him, gigantic arms, looks really cool in your shelf. Your bad guys have to be really big, I feel like, and DC does a great job of making their bad guys these gigantic brutes. And here, the execution of as you can see, most of the of our top picks here for our villains and ended up being these kind of oversized, massive, big fellas here. So it's I don't think it's not a coincidence here that Doomsday ends up on this list between the two of us because he's really 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 cool looking, and as you mentioned, the fact that he ends up showing up in the DCAU eventually after all of those years of being such an important part in the main continuity is really neat. And he looks like he does on the show pretty much. So you get the bald head and the long flowing like skullet and all that too. So it looks really neat. Good execution there for that one.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, just another one that when I saw that on the shelf again, pre-internet age, I certainly didn't have any idea that this was coming out. And when I saw that 6-pack on the shelf, I can remember just begging our mom. I think it was even like the Christmas season. It's not really the time to be asking your parents for new toys when you're about to get new stuff in a couple of weeks for the holidays anyway. But I really really put the work in to beg our mom to buy me that 6-pack just because I could not have the Doomsday figure, and thankfully she was generous enough to buy it for me because yes, this another character who made a lot more appearances in Liam's Justice League Unlimited figure federation than he actually did on screen in the DCAU.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a good one. I love that one. And wrapping up my top villain list here, Liam, and actually, I guess both of our lists at this point, is going to be my final villain, or actually, in this case, villainess. And we've already talked about how we like our villains to have some size and girth to them, I guess. Well, there's no one bigger in the villainess department than Giganta. And this was a fun one and a fun execution that they did for this one. So Giganta is my final entry on my list here. This one is like the total package in just, yeah, they knocked this one out of the ballpark. So the Giganta was actually a 2-pack. So you get a standard size version of her that's, the 4 3/4 inches or whatever it was that kind of matches up with everybody else. But then it came in the same package with an 8-inch tall version of Giganta. So you have the full like growth sized version of Giganta. Maybe not 1-to-1 scale of what she was on the show, but a larger version of her, obviously. And the packaging is really neat. It's like a full glass window that's got some holes punched in it, and it looks really great as a display piece. I actually never took mine that I got out of the package. It's really cool. I think that this was another one of those villains that has some memorable moments obviously in the show, and is just visually one of the more interesting and memorable villains that pop up in obviously her role in the Secret Society, and later on in the, I guess, the redone Secret Society, the Legion of Doom, if you will. She has some memorable turns in those episodes. So, and of course, being she was also one of the original Super Friends villains too. So she's got some name recognition there from her time there. So all of that, and then the execution here, she looks great. You took advantage of the fact that you could create a larger buck and do her 2 different sizes here, and you really have a gigantic villain to go with the rest of your Legion of Doom on your shelf if you want to. But yeah, this one was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, so they didn't make it to store shelves with this one. This was a little difficult to get your hands on, but yeah, this one is one that I feel like if you're a completist, you got to get this one because it's you got to get both of them too. You can't just go with, hey, I got myself a loose version of the small one. You got to have the big one too. You got to have both forms of Giganta with this because they really knocked it out of the park with this one.
Yeah, it's kind of the reverse. They did a similar thing when they released the Atom as a single figure. They gave him like a little mini version of it to go with it, so you could have pretend that he's shrinking down, which I always loved. And then to do the reverse of this with the giant character with Giganta, who, as you said, was again in season 2 of Justice League, and then quite a bit in JLU, has several appearances and is one of the more frequented super villainesses of the series. Yeah, that's a great execution, and another one that would be the line wouldn't feel quite complete if we had never gotten a Giganta at all. But to have like you said, this kind of 2 pack where you get the giant version, which could look very cool in the back of your display, or hey, you could even put her with the larger like 12-inch Justice League and JLU figures if she doesn't fit in your regular display. So some functionality there as well.
There you go. All right, and that rounds up our top 8 there, Liam. Some really interesting entries there between the two of us. If you love this series as much as we do, and you want to talk about your favorites, what did we overlook? It's hard when you got 70 plus different characters. Every single hero that was in the Justice League as a member got a figure by the end of this series. So it's really hard to narrow this down to 8 and also do it justice, pun intended. Please be kind to us. But you know what? Give us some feedback at DCAU Review on Twitter X or Instagram. You can also comment on the show if you're listening on Spotify, or leave a review on iTunes and let us know what we missed for the episode. Liam, as you mentioned at the top, though, we are not done with our top 8 here. Despite the fact that, as we mentioned, over 70 different characters eventually made their way into this series. I think it's actually more than that once we got into expanded. They did comic characters that never even made it to the actual screen, like Jay Garrick, and they did some really interesting, as I said, some repaints and stuff like that. We have future characters, as you mentioned. Future Static was
Mm-hmm.
on the cusp of being
Oh,
on my list. It's so neat that Future Static, his only like actual iteration in the DCAU action figure form, is Future Static. But
mm-hmm.
we get Future Static in here with Aqua Girl, and Micron also got an action figure out of everybody. So yeah, there are a lot of great ones. We could have easily spent another 2 hours talking about some of our other favorite figures here, but for posterity's sake, we did 8 each here. But we're also going to now discuss just briefly what are 3 figures that did not make it into any of these sets in the over almost 10 years of this series existing. And there's a couple that I feel like we picked out here, Liam, that we settled on that are some pretty glaring holes, to be honest.
Absolutely. And before we get to that, I just want to make a note. My first idea for this was Snapper Car, and Cal immediately named like 35 characters that should have gotten a figure before Snapper Car. But I felt hard done by, because I'm like, I thought I was making a good suggestion. And then you're like, but there's so many. Yes, even with as massive as this line got, and as you said, as many more obscure characters. They got into like Batman villains and re-releasing some of those early Mattel Batman like TNBA style figures like Nightwing and Batgirl and Robin. So there's plenty of meat on the bone, and I think Snapper Car is still a good idea, but I a bit under protest acquiesced, and we picked 3 that I think are actually like no-brainer ones here. And the first one here I'll start with the big fig of the bunch. We limited ourselves to one sort of oversized character, but it's very memorable in that second season of Justice League, the first and second seasons of Justice League Unlimited, I should say, which is the Annihilator robot, Hades and Hephaestus's magic robot that's fueled by rage. Of course, makes the first appearance in Hawk and Dove, then comes back later in the Task Force X episode before finally being put down after it's possessed by Felix Faust in an episode we actually haven't covered yet, but maybe we will in the coming year. So yeah, one of the big, as far as big figs go, I feel like this is one of the ones that they really could have gotten to and unfortunately did not.
Yeah, it plays such a huge role, and as you mentioned, it's. I feel like almost every character in the Cadmus story arc ended up getting made. We
Mm-hmm.
even got Amanda Waller and General Eiling figures out of this series. But yeah, the Annihilator being kind of an important moment in that storyline would have been really interesting. And again, maybe it would have been an exclusive online, maybe at a convention, something like that. But yeah, something that you could have just put in the back of your display that, again, that towers over everybody. all those gigantic characters kind of stand out as we've talked about. I mean, most of our villains on our list are those gigantic characters. So something else that would have looked really interesting on your shelf and been a fun piece to add, I think, yeah, is definitely a little bit of a glaring hole there, especially based on the role that it played in the series.
Absolutely.
And then Liam, so we'll go on to our second sort of wish list here, or what if you will. I think this one is equally. This one would have been felt like much more of a layup, and I don't know how Todd McFarlane himself has not done this with his love for the Batman character. You figured he would have done it in 7-inch form by this time, but Savage Time Batman, like the amount of
Ooh.
Batman figures that were produced for this series. By the end of this, we're getting like Batman the Animated Series deco on our Batman figures for this
Hmm.
for this Mattel sculpt with like the classic oval symbol, and he's packed
Hmm.
with Gray Ghost. We got a Gray Ghost figure out of
They
this
did
line
a
too, by the way. Gray
crazy,
Ghost,
crazy.
packed with Gray Ghost and Joker colored like he is from BTOS. So yeah,
Mhm.
it feels very obvious here that we should have gotten maybe one of the cooler, more memorable representations of the Dark Knight from the Savage Time. I don't know that you could have done a lot of the characters, although we did get a Black Hawk and we do get Vandal Savage, but you didn't really touch on some of the other memorable moments in that. We didn't get Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, or some of the. I don't I don't think that
Even
we
just
talked to.
John Stewart in an army outfit would have been cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give him a little helmet accessory and have fun with it. Give him the
Mhm.
you could have used the Lex Luthor buck with the boots and all that. It would have been very simple to do that. But yeah, I feel like this one would have been a layup to be very cool. And it's interesting. There's a leaked screenshot that's supposedly from I think a Toy Fair or maybe San Diego Comic Con, the final year of leaked lineups, or maybe it was a presentation from
Mhm.
Mattel about what their upcoming lineups were. And interestingly enough, I think this was 2011, Savage Time Batman was actually listed on there. So maybe there somewhere out there there's a prototype, or maybe it never got to development. But either way, this one feels like you could have had a lot of fun. You would have had a different Batman head after all of those same
Mhm.
reused Batman heads after after 55,000 different Batmans with the same head. But it would have been cool because it would have separated, he would have separated your Batman on your shelf from the kind of the mundane sort of repetition of that same sculpt over and over again. So and it's a cool look on screen, obviously.
Yeah, and that one feels pretty attainable as we talked about. They reused so many parts. You had so many characters with like the heel boots,
Hmm.
and maybe you don't have to sculpt all of the armor, and you just paint it on, and then it's just the new head. Like that feels like a pretty easy slam dunk for Mattel to have pulled off. So yeah, definitely one. And again, that's such a memorable sequence. That Savage Time three-parter is such an epic one. Probably one we deserve. We covered all three parts of that in one, and it was probably less than an hour long. So that might be another one like the Justice League pilot episodes that we might need to go back and revisit in a bit more depth someday on the show. But yeah, that Batman sequence in part one when they're in the present day Nazi controlled world is so memorable, and that sequence where Batman pulls the laser rifle on them and kind of has a toe to toe with Superman is so memorable. So yeah, that would be a definite slam dunk. And then as has been a theme here, Cal, on our last choice for a dream figure for this Mattel JLU line, we've talked about righting the wrongs, characters that should have gotten maybe a figure, or we wish to have gotten a figure in other DCAU toy lines. Even though her JLU appearance is maybe not quite as memorable as her Superman the Animated Series figures, we never got a DCAU Granny Goodness figure. And that's such a tragedy. And I think that she would have to be the last one on our dream Mattel JLU list.
I dare say it is a miscarriage of justice that Ed Asner's Granny Goodness was never immortalized in plastic form. I will just say
Mhm.
that. Yeah, we've talked.
They made Mantis for God. Like talk about like deep cut apocalypse characters. Like they made a Mantis, but we didn't get Granny Goodness.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could have done again. We could just sit here and fantasy book all day long, but a High Father and Granny Goodness 2-pack,
Ooh.
did to. I mean, High Father it was in Superman and in
Mhm.
Justice League, so I mean, he makes appearances throughout. You did have Orion, obviously, and a couple of the other guys from the New Gods, New Genesis, show up in action figure form. But yeah, the big glaring hole here that is such a important character in Superman the animated series, and has memorable interactions with not only Superman but Supergirl in that series, and then
Mhm.
obviously has some more appearances here in the Justice League Unlimited, and with Mr. Miracle and Big
Mhm.
Barda in an episode, and yeah, there's more than enough reason to have made a Granny Goodness figure, regardless of how you get it out. It's sad that we never got that got that figure in plastic form because boy howdy, what a interesting and memorable looking character design, and also of course as we've talked about our love for Mr. Asner's take on her as a character. So yeah, very 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 sad that that figure never got made.
We loved Ed Asner's Granny so much that when there was a New Gods movie allegedly in production during the one of the previous DC Studios regimes, we made it we made it our mission to try to get him cast as Granny Goodness in live action because we were so enamored with him, and I still think that would have been great casting. It's a shame both that Mr. Asner's passed and that movie never got made. But yeah, Ed Asner's Granny Goodness, one of the true great DCAU villains, and unfortunately never got immortalized in plastic form. So yeah, that one had to round out our list here. Hashtag Ed Asner for Granny forever.
That's right, absolutely. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for this week's bonus episode. We love, as we said, to hear your feedback. If you have memories about this toy line, if you have memories about what your favorite figures are, maybe you have your own ideas for a figure that never got made from the show that should have gotten made. Are you a Drago fan? Maybe you wanted a Draga like figure. Like that was your dream, so that you could reenact World World. Maybe you're one of those people that loved the World World episode. I don't know, all
Did
five
you
of
want the
you.
fake? Did you want the fake Hugh Hefner guy from A Night with Shadows?
That would. Oh yeah, what was that guy's name? It was definitely another
Irv?
name, Irv something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Harv, I think.
Harvey, yeah, Harvey, yeah, something, something. Yep. Either way, you wanted the her figure. Yeah, maybe you wanted I don't know, maybe you wanted a Snapper car figure. It's
Hey,
the glaring hole in your shelf is Snapper car. Like he would come with his hand would be in like the snapping motion, right? You got to have Snapper car. Yeah, I don't know. We'd love to hear it either way. Please do us a favor. Tweet us at DCAU Review on Twitter X. You can also slide into those DMs on Instagram. You can also comment on any of our posts. We'll put up a post this week about it also to discuss our favorite figures from this Mattel DCAU line. You can also, as I said, comment on the episode. If you're listening on Spotify, we do check and read those comments and appreciate those that do comment there. You can also comment if you're listening on YouTube. Or if you don't listen on YouTube and you want to leave a comment and maybe you don't have any of the other social media accounts, that's a good way to interact with us. Head over to YouTube, search for the DCAU Review, and subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and comment there, please. We're still growing our presence there on the YouTube channel, so please join us there if you will. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you once again for listening to this 7th annual Black Friday special bonus episode. We cannot wait to do it again, hopefully next year. And on behalf of Liam, I hope that you and yours have a lovely holiday season as we kick things off here. And whether you enjoy the holidays or maybe the holidays are not so warm and welcoming for you, just just know that we care about you and we're thankful for you. And we hope that you do have a good season anyway. But until next episode, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Merry Thanksgiving.
Now you can say it.